The sniffer is screaming. Not a loud scream. Those are for the amateurs who want to die. It's a low, rhythmic pulse, a sub-bass thrumming through the floor plates of the Oasis. Someone, probably a pack of nethounds from the low city or a stray Corp recon drone, has found my digital footprint. My location on the black market net is leaking like a punctured lung. Every packet I send out to the archives is a breadcrumb leading them straight to my airlock. If I don't scramble my signature in the next hour, I'm not going to be the one recording these logs. I'll just be another skeleton for the next scavenger to pick over. The air in here is getting thin, or maybe it's just the panic tasting like iron in the back of my throat. I've got the perimeter shields on a low power cycle to buy time, but the static is rising. I've been digging through the south heap for 3 hours, my hands stained with the black grease of 1,000 forgotten machines. My lungs are heavy with the taste of oxidized copper and the ghosts of lead solder. I finally found it, buried under a rusted chassis of a pre-fall transport. A glass ghost. A 19-inch cathode ray monitor, its screen cracked like a spider web, but its internals still whispering. To most, it's just a heavy, useless box of poison and glass. To me, it's a treasury of Silic-Fossils, the only thing capable of generating a signal messy enough to hide a man in a world of perfect digital clarity. The glass ghost is a relic of a time when we didn't just look at data. We projected it with electron guns. It's a crude, violent way to handle information, and that's exactly why the modern trackers won't see it coming. They're looking for clean digital shifts, the kind of surgical encryption you buy in the high city. I'm going to give them the jagged, analog chaos of a dying vacuum tube. I dragged the beast back to the bench, my spine popping with every step. It's heavy. The leaded glass alone weighs enough to break a man's toes if he's careless. I've laid it face down on a piece of salvaged synth tarp. You have to be careful with these. The vacuum inside is a hungry thing, a pocket of nothingness from the old world waiting to swallow the air around it. If that glass snaps the wrong way, it doesn't just break, it implodes, turning every shard into a lead-lined needle aimed at your jugular. But the real danger isn't the glass. It's the transient vaults hidden near the power rail. Even after decades in the dirt, a glass ghost can hold a bite. Those static traps, the large cylindrical canisters, can store enough of a ghost charge to stop a scavenger's heart. I've seen it happen. A greedy hand reaches in for the copper, touches the wrong lead, and pop. They're dead before they hit the floor, their nerves fried before they can even scream. I use my grounding rod, a simple length of rusted rebar wrapped in synthetic skin, to bleed the vaults dry. The spark is a brilliant, terrifying blue, a small scream of energy returning to the earth, smelling of ozone and ozone's bitter cousin, burnt dust. Now I'm looking at the prize, the deflection yoke. It's a beautiful, intricate copper spiral that sits around the neck of the tube like a restrictive collar. In the old world, it used magnetic fields to steer the electron beam, painting pictures on the phosphor. Today, it's going to be my frequency shifter. By grafting this into my transmission line, I can create a magnetic jitter that will bounce my signal across the spectrum, making the Oasis look like a ghost in the machine. The frequency is locked. The Silic-Fossils are laid out on the bench. Let the graft begin. The soldering iron is a crude instrument, a heavy copper tip I filed down from a piece of industrial bus bar, heated by a glowing coil of nichrome wire salvaged from a toasted ration heater. It's too hot, always too hot. But that's the way it has to be when you're working with this thick, leaded solder from the 20th century. I watch the tip turn a dull cherry red in the shadows of the bench, the only light coming from the flickering cyber blue LEDs of my dying diagnostic rig. It looks like a small, angry star. I lean in, my respirator hissing as I draw a breath of filtered, metallic air. "Steady, Vance," I whisper to myself. "Don't let the ghost bite." I start with the flyback transformer, the heavy, black-potted block of epoxy and ferrite that acted as the heart of the Glass Ghost's power supply. In the old world, this thing took a modest current and stepped it up to thousands of volts to feed the electron gun. In my world, it's a transient vault of lethal potential. I have to desolder the pins from the main board without cracking the ferrite core. If that core snaps, the magnetic flux, the flow chambers, won't hold, and the signal will just bleed into the air as heat. I apply the iron to the first joint. The old flux bubbles and pops, releasing a thin, acrid ribbon of white smoke that smells like a burning library. It's a sweet, sickly scent. I use a manual suction pump, a spring-loaded plastic tube that kicks like a mule every time I trigger it, to pull the molten solder away. 1 pin, 2 pins. My hands are shaking just a hair. It's the hunger, or maybe the cold, or maybe just the knowledge that if my iron slips and bridges the high-voltage rail to a sensitive micro-logic chip nearby, the resulting surge will cook my entire workbench. Once the transformer is free, I turn my attention to the red Serpent, the thick, insulated cable that leads to the anode cup on the side of the tube. This is where the most dangerous static traps live. Even though I've grounded the tube, there's a phenomenon we call elastic charge. The glass behaves like a massive capacitor, and the voltage can actually creep back up from the vacuum after you think it's empty. I keep my grounding rod clipped to the chassis as I peel back the suction cup. It groans against the glass, a wet, suctioning sound that makes my skin crawl. Beneath it is the anode hole, a dark eye staring back at me. I slide a piece of salvaged synthetic skin, plastic tubing from a medical IV drip, over the exposed wire to ensure no stray arcs jump to my fingers during the graft. Now for the surgery. I take the copper yoke, that beautiful, dense weave of wire I pulled from the tube's neck, and I begin to unwind it. It's high-purity copper, coated in a thin layer of amber enamel. I don't need the whole thing, just enough to create a Jitter-Loop. I wind 20 turns around the ferrite core of the flyback transformer. This is the suture. I'm physically coupling the high-frequency oscillation of the transformer to the magnetic field of the yoke. By running my outgoing signal line, a frayed piece of coaxial cable I pulled from a bulkhead, through the center of this coil, I'm forcing the digital data to pass through a turbulent magnetic storm. "There," I mutter, my voice cracking. "Now you've got something to talk to, don't you?" The bench is a graveyard of Silic-Fossils. I need a way to control the frequency of the jitter, or I'll just scramble my own brain along with the signal. I dig through a tray of desoldered components and find a handful of Static-Sieves, potentiometers and variable resistors from an old radio. They're gritty with dust, their internal wipers corroded. I douse them in a spray of ghost water, reclaimed isopropyl alcohol, and twist them back and forth until the resistance values stabilize on my meter. I solder them into a feedback loop between the flyback's primary winding and a salvaged power transistor I've bolted to a scrap metal heatsink. The heat from the iron is making the sweat sting my eyes. I wipe my forehead with a greasy sleeve, leaving a smudge of carbon on my skin. This is the graft. The delicate, violent act of forcing two eras of technology to breathe together. I'm wire wrapping the connections now, using a small hand tool to twist the copper leads around the terminal posts. Soldering is for permanence, but wire wrapping is for tension. It creates a gas-tight seal that can withstand the vibrations of the Oasis's ventilation fans. I look at the assembly. It's a hideous, beautiful mess. A black block of epoxy, a halo of amber copper, and a spiderweb of multicolored wires, all held together by the gray, dull scars of lead solder. It looks less like an encryption device and more like a mechanical parasite. I can feel the weight of it in my hands, the literal weight of the lead and the figurative weight of the risk. If I've miscalculated the impedance of the Static-Sieves, the flyback will resonate at a frequency that could shatter the glass of the CRT I'm still using as a monitor. Or worse, it could create a static feedback loop that would travel back up the power line and fry my shelter's main transient vaults, leaving me in total darkness while the nethounds close in. I check the joints one last time. I'm looking for cold solders, those dull, grainy connections that look like gray sugar. They're the hidden killers in any graft. They look solid, but they offer resistance, creating heat until the joint fails at the worst possible moment. I find one on the ground plane and hit it again with the iron, watching it flow into a bright silver pool that mirrors the blue light of the LEDs. The sniffer pulse in the floorboards has gotten faster. They're narrowing the search grid. My hands are steady now, locked into the cold focus of the craft. There's no room for fear, only the math of the circuit and the feel of the metal. I take a length of aluminium foil, salvaged from a pre-fall ration pack, and wrap it around the entire assembly. This is my shielding shell, a crude Faraday cage to keep the frequency shifter from broadcasting its own location to any drone within 5 miles. I secure the foil with strips of adhesive synthetic skin. The graft is complete. The organ is ready for transplant. My transmission line is severed, waiting for this chaotic heart to be spliced into the gap. I can hear the hum of the Oasis, a low moan of a machine that's tired of living. I know how it feels. But we aren't done yet. Not today. The floorboards aren't just thrumming anymore. They're vibrating with the mechanical hunger of a search grid closing in. I can almost hear the servos of the drones whining in the smog outside, their sensors sniffing for the faint heat of my existence. There's no more time for almost, or maybe. I take the output leads from the frequency shifter and splice them directly into the Oasis's main transmission hub. I use heavy, rusted alligator clips, the kind that bite deep into the copper and never let go, and wrap the whole mess in a rag soaked in conductive carbon grease to ensure the contact is absolute. "Don't fail me now, you beautiful broken thing," I whisper, my fingers brushing the cold, leaded glass of the CRT one last time. "Show them the chaos you were born from." I reach for the master toggle. It's a heavy industrial switch I pulled from a pre-fall power station, its Bakelite handle chipped and scarred by decades of grit. I throw it. The reaction is immediate and violent. The Oasis's internal lights, those dim, flickering, cyber blue LEDs, plunge into total darkness for a heartbeat as the flyback transformer gulps down the remaining current from my primary transient vaults. Then, a sound I haven't heard in years. The high-frequency singing of a CRT warming up. It's a sound that exists on the razor edge of human hearing, a needle-thin whine that makes my teeth ache and the hair on my arms stand up like they're trying to flee my skin. The assembly on the bench begins to glow, not with the warmth of a fire, but with a faint, violet corona discharge dancing around the flyback's anode. The smell of ozone is overwhelming now, thick and electric, like a thunderstorm trapped in a tin can and forced to scream. On the cracked screen of the Glass Ghost, a single, jagged green line appears. It's not a flat horizon anymore. It's a mountain range of interference, dancing to the chaotic, rhythmic jitter of the magnetic yoke. I look at my sniffer rig. The rhythmic pulse that was tracking me, that steady, predatory thump, 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 is staggering. It slows, hitches, and then dissolves into a chaotic mess of white noise. To the nethounds, The Oasis has just ceased to be a digital entity. We've become a ghost, a smudge of analog static in a world that only understands the clean logic of ones and zeros. The Scrambler is working. The data packets are being shredded by the Yoke's magnetic field and put back together in a way that's technically legal, but practically unreadable to any modern logic gate. I sink back into my seat, the metal groaning under my weary weight. My heart is hammering against my ribs, trying to keep pace with the high-frequency whine of the transformer. For a moment, the Oasis is silent. I've vanished. I've become part of the background radiation of a dead world. But as the tension leaves my shoulders, a new light begins to pulse on the auxiliary panel. A deep, bruised purple I don't recognize. It's not coming from my graft. It's a signal coming from deeper within the black market net. Something ancient and heavy. Something that recognized the frequency of the glass ghost and decided to answer. The hounds might be gone, but I think I just rang a bell that hasn't been heard in 30 years. The world outside is a graveyard of silicon and bone, and tonight I've added another layer of fog to hide my own grave. Keep your frequency shifters calibrated and your vaults shielded, Scavengers. The net is wide, and some ghosts don't like being woken up. Access the deeper archives on the net for the full schematics. Keep surviving.